The time is 2 o'clock, and you are listening to KTWH LP, as you might have figured out. KTWH LP 2 Harbors, make it FCC compliant there. You might have figured that out from listening to the high school show, and that high school show will be repeated Sunday at 1:30 as well. I am hearing myself awfully loudly, but I guess that's some setting I could change later. So I am situated in the production studio. It's 2 o'clock on Friday, the third Friday of the month, which is usually when we are airing The Tale Collector, put together by Erica Adams, and we indeed will be doing that in just a moment, but I'm happy to inform you that I have Erica Adams sitting here live in the studio, along with Tom Koehler, who has shared this block of time since the beginning of time.
Yes.
And so while I get things kind of set up here, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and tell us what your respective roles have been here at KTWH in the last 44 months.
Yeah, Tom and I we like to tell everyone stories that we feel passionate about, that have influenced us for a long time, right, Tom?
Oh, sure. In my case, I would almost rather talk than eat, so this satisfies me tremendously. I do not have the creativity that you have analyzing a story and making the remarks on whatever it is that you are working on. My own skill is just sight reading an old story and trying to read it as clearly and plainly as I can. Not much creativity there, mostly patience, and then I edit out what I don't like before the station gets it. I salute you, Erica, for your creativity.
Well, thank you very much. But yeah, I mean, you bringing old stories, to the new age, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that.
That very well may be. I have noticed that the stories that I tend to favor are from the latter half of the 19th century and the earlier half of the 20th century because, well, that's the way my boat floats, and it's also copyright-free. It's in the public domain for the most part. I have gotten permission from some copyright owners for their material, most notably the politically correct bedtime stories, which introduced my voice to the KTWH airwaves. I have noticed that the sensibility of humor in the 19th century is significantly different from ours in most cases, and so that has eliminated a lot of stories that I might enjoy telling otherwise. But Mark Twain is a master, and I rely on him considerably.
Yep.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Although there have been one or two words that I've had to tone down to modern sensibilities.
Okay.
The less said on that, the better.
Yeah, with all that said, listeners, we'd like to thank you for tuning in, and, not just today, but, for the last few years. It's meant a lot to all of us.
Right. And so this is your chance to show your support for this great, unique, locally produced programming by sending a little money this way, whatever you're comfortable with. And I don't know if either of you have been listening to us enough to be able to rattle off the contact information.
Area code 218-595-6195. If you're hearing this on a ordinary radio, you don't need the area code because it's going to be a local call. But for those in Alaska and Hawaii and all of the other finer portions of the country outside our area code, it is area code 218-595-6195 or ktwh.org on your streaming device. There may be a contact link there.
Well, there's a donate link for sure. Right
oh my! Well, that's even better.
We're trying to make it
and send all of your money, and then just live on your credit card until your paycheck comes in.
Right. Yes, thank you. I never would have remembered all of that. So thank you, Tom.
My head is filled with a great deal of mental lint, and I've recited the number often enough that I cannot not say it.
Yeah, somehow I have the phone number for a major radio network in our state in my head forever.
Oh my.
But I won't be sharing that at this moment.
Well, you never know when it may come in handy in the future.
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, if we get them to send us money, we would have to be able to call them.
To thank them, yes, indeed.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure.
Or you could just, have to write it down for whatever reason if you're just writing something from the past. You never know.
You never know. Right, and actually there are a couple more options. You can put something in an envelope and mail it to us, and you can even make a cashier's check if you want to be completely anonymous, but we have a P.O. Box 622, 2 Harbors, 55616. And as far as the website, we have had a problem with, you can make a one-time donation, no problem. The sustaining memberships, sustaining donations monthly with automatic withdrawals button is currently, we're having a little issue. We haven't gotten the tech support for that we need, but we recommend that you call us here. We will help you set it up through your financial institution anyway, which actually is better for us because then there's no percentage taken off the top like PayPal is known to do.
I have been carrying a few pieces of green paper around with me for a while. I had recently collected on a small debt, and so I am now turning that over to Fran as we speak. The amount will remain nameless.
Donation, you can, and that's the last way, right? We encourage this way too, coming in person to our studio. We will or won't put you on air according to your preference. But thank you, Tom, for coming on air with us, and thank you for your donation on the spot.
No problem.
Live.
And remember, we have specially trained operators standing by to accept your donations in person, by proxy, or electronically.
Yep.
Yeah. And,
okay.
If you come in person, we'd love to meet you. We want to meet all our listeners.
Right. We could get, that's the easiest way to get feedback from you about what we're doing. So, in fact, if you show up before 3 o'clock, we may put you on the air. I will quickly mention from 3 to 5, we have a couple extra hours of the Beat Farm today. There will be live music from 3 o'clock on here with Leslie and Carl hosting. And then at 5 o'clock, the regular Beat Farm, which this week features Brand Morrison and Roxanne Berglund. But it's time right now. People may have tuned in actually to hear Erica Adams' Tale Collector. So we'll hear the current May episode of the Tale Collector for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be back. Tom and Erica will still be here in the studio, and after a little more chatter, you'll hear a very unique production just hot off the press from Tom Koehler. Okay, well, this is a rare opportunity. We have Erica Adams live in the studio, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, along with Tom Koehler. And I want to take this opportunity to mention that her theme music, the episode just went out on, and that it starts out with each time, was written and performed by Brand Morrison. And that it's called The Call.
Yes.
And, of course, Brand and Roxanne will be here live in the studio at 5 o'clock this afternoon, Leslie and Carl hosting them. So, and between now and then, other live musicians, too, the Lindola brothers, I'm not sure if I have the pronunciation right, but they're already here playing out on the sidewalk, we hear, outside the Harbor Landing building, if you want to come down and get a preview. And then Shane Nelson from Crescent Moon at 4 o'clock. But getting back to our studio guests here, in honor of Spring Pledge Drive time, we will be hearing a story by Tom soon, actually his own composition this time. We'll talk about that in a minute and then hear it. But I did want to find out a little, wow, we are already behind schedule, so we can't take too long about this. But I just wondered how Erica reviews many kinds of media, videos and games and movies and music. How do you decide? It seems like you must, we'd be happy to use 2 episodes a month if you,
yeah,
because there's so much out there. How do you narrow down on what you decide to take on?
I think my first criteria is, it has to be, a story that, that I'm really familiar with and that I enjoy for a specific reason, even if it does have flaws of some kind. Just anything that interests me, enough so I can enjoy it and understand it. The way I structure them each month has gotten a little bit more random over the years. I do pick them each month according to when they're published or whether their creator has a birthday or something like that, or if there's, some special date involved. But otherwise, for the most part, nowadays, it's kind of a surprise each time.
Okay, whatever grabs you for that month.
So, yeah.
And then you also have a website associated with your productions.
Yes, I actually recently revamped my site. I bought a domain, so I don't have the Weebly name on it anymore. Okay. So all my old content is on there. I moved it all on there. I've revamped it so that's, I'm hoping, a little easier to navigate and a little more visually appealing. elatales.com.
ELA Tales. Okay,
yes,
your initials probably.
Yes, yeah. The L is for my middle name, Lynn. So Erica Lynn Adams is my full name, so ELA Tales.
Tales.com.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Great. Good. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll launch into Tom's recording here pretty shortly, but tell us about how you, obviously you don't want to tell us the whole story, and you do explain where it came from at the beginning of it, but it was kind of fun. It's the first time, it's the first time, right? Other than one time you had to talk because you didn't have the copyright, I remember. You had to tell us kind of...
I told a story about the story.
Right.
And otherwise, in the case of the piece you're about to hear, my mind makes odd connections from time to time, and I don't even have to steer them. They just pop into my head, And enough of the pieces, it's like 3 points define a plane in geometry. Mm-hmm. And so if I get enough points, whatever they are, that kind of come together, why, then it just slaps me upside the head like an old carp, Hey, that's a story, and here's how it could fit. And I've done that with a couple of traditional folk tales and localized them to my own experience or what could be my own experience. This particular one relates to a classic Paul Bunyan story, and I made a localized version of it for Two Harbors.
Okay, well, let's launch right into it right now. This is really fun.
Hello, my name is Tom Koehler. I read stories here on KTWH LP, Two Harbors, Minnesota. This is our community radio station run by volunteers for you, our Two Harbors listening audience. Ordinarily, my stories are from late 19th century, early 20th century short story literature. And today, because of this fundraising event, I'm telling you my own version, a borrowing, if you will, from classic American tall tale literature. The title is about, it has no title. I didn't think about it that far enough. It's about Juha Matti Panjanen and his pet moose, Poika, and how they helped a problem in Two Harbors with Skunk Creek. It was based on a Paul Bunyan story where he and Babe the Blue Ox straightened out the upper portion of the Mississippi River and created the Gulf of Mexico in the process with the leftover water from the river. I hope that you will enjoy this variation, and I hope that you will enjoy it enough that you will contribute freely to the support of this volunteer-operated station. Thank you. Please enjoy. This story is an adaptation of a Paul Bunyan story, which is an American classic about how Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox straightened out the Mississippi River and created the Gulf of Mexico. This is localized to the North Shore, and so I am going to tell you a story from the early days of the town of Agate Bay. As the iron ore industry grew, so Agate Bay also grew, and growth brought growing pains. There was a Finnish logger named Matti Juha Panjanen, who was a brawny giant of a man, nearly 3 axe handles tall. He was so big that everyone just called him Paljon, which in Finnish means simply a lot. Paljon worked very near to town, cutting pine for the local sawmill. He would also cut and buck pulp boats for shipping to paper mills. He sometimes contracted with the railroad for logs to be cut into ties for track construction. He did not have an ox to skid his logs, but he did have a pet moose he had raised from an orphaned calf. This moose was probably the largest animal anyone in town had ever seen, and that included Thomas Owens, who had seen an elephant in Chicago once. The moose was so big that everyone called it Poika, which was a fond term for boy or babe. Moose are, of course, a very dark brown color, nearly black. Well, Poika was so dark that sometimes, if the light were just right, He almost had a bluish cast to a glossy dark coat. Palyan and Poika were a familiar sight in town, and when they were not busy logging, could be relied upon to help out with large tasks in the area. There was a nice new tunnel in the middle of town to carry Skunk Creek to the shore of the lake, near the old town site of Burlington, but there was a problem. The creek was so crooked that it wandered and meandered back and forth on its way to the lake, and in the spring thaw and during heavy rainstorms would not go through the tunnel. In fact, it seldom went through the tunnel and would flood much of the area, making growth and development difficult at best. The town council would meet for breakfast at Delmonico's and discuss the problems of the day, and one time the topic was about what to do about Skunk Creek and the tunnel. While Palyan was not on the town council, he was having breakfast at a nearby table and overheard the men speaking of the problem. It would be expensive to build a wider tunnel for the creek, and even more expensive to dig a new channel for the creek, and they just did not know what to do. Well, Palyan got up from his table and went over to their table and excused himself. He said, "I'm sorry, I could hear what you were saying about Skunk Creek, and I got an idea I think will work." The councilmen were a little startled at first, but listened. Finns were sometimes considered troublemakers because it seemed they were always organizing workers and running cooperative stores, but they knew Palyan, and they knew he did a lot of good things for the people in the area. Palyan continued in his calm, accented voice, "I think me and Poika can fix Skunk Creek for you cheap. It will fit in a tunnel." Of course, there was some discussion on the topic, but that would just make the story longer than it needs to be, so just know that Palyan was given the go-ahead for his plan, and the town council finished their breakfast. It was early winter, and Palyan went down to the Skunk Creek beach at the old Burlington town site and set a heavy log chain in the water not far from the mouth of the river. By and by, winter set in earnest, and the creek finally froze solid. It was so cold, in fact, that talking outdoors was often difficult because it seemed like the words would freeze in the air and nothing could be heard. Well, that is a matter for another story, and we are concerned with Skunk Creek. Palyan and Poika went down to the mouth of the creek with a length of mooring cable from the new tugboat and hitched it to the log chain that was placed in the creek bed earlier in the fall. The big lake was frozen quite solid for hundreds of yards, so there was somewhere for Poika to walk. He was wearing caulked moose shoes, so he had good traction on the ice as he tugged on the mooring cable. Steadily he tugged, encouraged by Palyan, and slowly the ice from the creek began to move. Poika would tug 13 yards of Skunk Creek ice at a time out onto the lake ice near shore, and Palyan would chop the chunk of creek ice off at the shoreline and unhook the log chain. He and Poika would walk back to shore and hook up the log chain to the creek ice again, and Poika would tug again, just like a tug-of-war with the creek. Again and again, a 13-yard length of Skunk Creek ice would be pulled out onto the lake and cut free. Soon a huge pile of Skunk Creek ice sections were piled on the shore of the lake near the Burlington town site. It was getting awfully hard to pull more creek ice out onto the lake, so Palyan figured the creek had been straightened out as much as Poika could manage. Spring came, and the Skunk Creek ice that had been piled up on shore melted and created Burlington Bay. The creek was straightened out so well that it fit perfectly in the tunnel where it runs today to the shore of Lake Superior, giving the city its name, Two Harbors, for the two bays now at the town site. The town was now able to expand into the next addition, and people could travel easily from the new north side of town to the older south side of town. all thanks to the efforts of Palyan Panyanen and Poika, the almost blue moose.
Yay, Tom. Thank you.
That was fun.
Yeah, yep. The original creation and production, home production, you might have guessed, by Tom.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's really fun. You should do more of that, Tom.
I agree. The flesh is certainly willing, but the mind is a little bit weak. I have to wait for the stories to kind of make themselves known to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be natural.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, the creativity's got to be natural.
I have a couple, 3 other stories that I've told or localized. One about the snake-bit hoe handle, and a story about embarrassment, which I would like to think of as a advisory tale for school-age students today who are overly worried about being embarrassed.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That was fun.
Yeah. So the reason we have these live radio producers in the studio with us today is to help celebrate our spring fund drive, and as a little extra incentive for you listeners to show your support for KTWH. And I guess we could run through the ways people can do that just quickly one more time.
Area code 218-595-6195. Or you can walk down 7th Street until you come to the landing building, go in through the atrium area to the studio and make your payment in person, old-fashioned analog style.
Great, yeah.
Or you can go to our donate page at ktwh.org.
Mm-hmm, excellent.
I'll walk you through it.
Great, thanks. And there's the address if you're out of town and don't want to go through the PayPal routine on the website and so forth. You can just do a good old-fashioned check, put it in the mail to P.O. Box 622, 2 Harbors, 55616. I did want to introduce listeners to the fact that going forth, occasionally we'll be filling the second 15 minutes of the 2 to 2:30 block when usually Tom and Erica and Tom have their programs. We'll be running some archived episodes of Erica's Tale Collector in place of rerunning Tom's. Tom's got so much going on in life. Everybody will tell you this, that once you're retired, you just get too busy to do everything you want to do.
Oh, sure. I don't even know how I had time for work before.
Yeah, right. So we cherish his productions, and actually we did mislead some people by saying maybe we would have one of your politically correct bedtime stories this afternoon, but instead he had this great inspiration for the story we just heard. But depending on how long ago it was that we reran those last, and maybe Moose can figure that out, we may rerun some of those again. I know a lot of your stories we have run 2 or 3 times, and so when all else fails, we will be delighted to share Erica's earlier productions again. And so that's just another thing that might be happening. So, speaking of which, we asked Erica to pick out a favorite episode of the past to share in this hour, because we are preempting the what is usually the poetry, often is the outside poetry show that is in this half hour if we don't have a new Art Around the Lake production. And so she picked the episode from last November 2018 about Jim Henson, and we will hear that. Did you start it already? Oh, you are hearing it right now. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Erica. We'll pipe down here.